Imagine coming back from a peaceful vacation in Thailand, only to find out your entire ranch, your land, your home, everything was sold without your knowledge. Yeah, that's exactly what happened to me while I was halfway across the world. Sipping coconut water and minding my business, Karen from the HOA pulled the most outrageous stunt I've ever seen in my life. She somehow convinced people she had authority over my property, faked documents, and sold my ranch behind my back. And no, this isn't some exaggerated drama, this is real. Now, I know what you're thinking. How is that even possible? How could someone just sell someone else's property? Well, that's what I asked myself too when I landed back in the States. To find strangers living on my land and my animals confused out of their minds. I thought maybe it was some mix-up. But when I saw Karen's mug as ever claiming she was just following HOA protocol, that's when I knew something shady was going on. Turns out she'd been forging signatures, lying to agents, and pretending to be some kind of community authority. She even told people I had abandoned the property after being gone for only 2 weeks. But here's the twist. She didn't just mess with the wrong homeowner. She messed with someone who keeps every receipt. I had surveillance. I had proof of ownership. And once the sheriff saw what I had, things started unraveling fast. But this isn't just about one person's ranch. It's about how far some HOA Karens are willing to go when they think they can get away with anything. And trust me, things took an even darker turn after the police got involved. You won't believe what we found out during the investigation. To understand how this all happened, you've got to know a bit about Karen and our HOA. Karen isn't just any neighbor. She's the self-proclaimed queen of the neighborhood. Always nosing around where she doesn't belong. Always throwing around rules she either made up or twisted to benefit herself. She somehow got herself on the HOA board. And ever since, she's been treating it like her personal kingdom. Most folks around here just roll their eyes and ignore her. But I always kept my distance until now. I had no idea she had her eyes on my property. My ranch sits on the edge of our community. Technically, just inside the HOA boundary. It's a large piece of land, private, quiet, with a few horses and a little orchard. I worked hard for that place. It's not just land, it's my life's work. When I planned my 2-week trip to Thailand, I left everything secure. My cameras running, my neighbor keeping an eye on things. What I didn't expect was for Karen to start making moves the moment I stepped out of the country. She started small spreading rumors that I was selling, that I'd fallen into financial trouble, even telling people she had power of attorney, which is a straight-up lie, if people bought it. She forged a sale agreement, passed off fake IDs, and somehow got a shady buyer involved who paid in cash. And the craziest part, she got the whole thing pushed through without a single legal notice sent to me. No calls, no letters, nothing. When I came back and saw the gate lock changed and someone else's truck in the driveway, I was being pranked. But that feeling in my gut told me something was seriously wrong. And it wasn't until I saw the HOA letter taped to the door that I knew Karen had crossed a line. She couldn't step back from Dot. As I stood there staring at that HOA letter, I felt this weird mix of anger and disbelief. The letter claimed the property had been reclaimed due to abandonment and failure to meet community standards. Complete nonsense. I wasn't gone for more than 2 weeks, and I'd even submitted my vacation notice through the HOA's online portal before leaving. But of course, Karen ran that system too. My name, my messages, my uploads all mysteriously wiped. I tried calling her, but surprised straight to voicemail. The new owner showed up an hour later, acting like I was the trespasser. He flashed some paperwork and said he'd bought the place in an off-market deal through the HOA liaison. I could already tell he'd been scammed too, but he didn't want to hear it. Things got heated fast, and I had no choice but to leave and head to the sheriff's office. That's when things really started unraveling. Turns out, mine wasn't the only property Karen had been messing with. Another neighbor had recently filed a complaint that Karen was demanding random compliance fees for minor things, like mailbox color or fence height fees that didn't exist in the official bylaws. One elderly couple even said Karen threatened them with eviction over a supposed landscaping violation. So while she was targeting me, she was running side scams through the HOA, abusing her role and playing God with the neighborhood. At this point, I started digging deeper. I pulled my surveillance footage from the ranch, and sure enough, you could see Karen walking the buyer through my property like she was some kind of real estate agent. She even had a clipboard in her hand, pointing out the barn and the irrigation system like she knew what she was talking about. And that's when it hit me this wasn't random. She'd been planning this, watching, waiting, and the worst part, she wasn't working alone. Once I realized Karen wasn't acting alone, everything started clicking into place. The fake buyer. The missing HOA records the forged signatures. It was too clean to be just one person pulling the strings. I went back through the surveillance clips and caught sight of another familiar face. Greg, the HOA treasurer. He'd always kept to himself, kind of quiet. But apparently he'd been signing off on Karen's shady compliance fees and helping her move money around. They were using HOA accounts to make everything look official. I brought the footage to a lawyer and then to the sheriff, and that's when things escalated fast. The sheriff's office opened an investigation, but they warned me to stay low-key for now. Said they needed time to collect hard evidence before moving in. Meanwhile, I had to watch strangers living in my house, riding my ATV, letting their dog run through my orchard like they owned it. Every day that passed made my blood boil. But things took a darker turn when I found out someone had tried to wipe the hard drives from the security system I had installed around the ranch. Luckily, I'd backed up everything to a cloud server before leaving, but just knowing someone had broken into my tech, that they were actively trying to cover their tracks, made it even more serious. This wasn't just about power trips or HOA abuse anymore. This was full-on fraud. Word started spreading through the neighborhood. A few brave folks came forward, saying they'd seen Karen and Greg meeting late at night in the HOA clubhouse, shredding papers, locking the doors behind them. One even heard them arguing something about covering tracks and money already spent. That's when I knew we were reaching a breaking point. The evidence was building. The walls were closing in, and Karen's calm, smug mask was starting to slip. And then, out of nowhere, I got a call from someone I never expected, someone who changed everything. The phone call came late in the evening, just as I was sorting through more paperwork with my lawyer. I didn't recognize the number, but something told me to answer. The voice on the other end was shaky, nervous almost, like they were scared to even be calling me. It was Lisa, a former HOA board member who had mysteriously resigned months ago without explanation. What she told me left me speechless. Lisa said she tried to expose Karen and Greg months earlier, but was forced out after they threatened her with legal action and personal blackmail. Apparently, Keely, they had dirt on nearly everyone in the HOA board, things they'd found by snooping through private documents and misusing board access. Keely confessed that Karen had been planning to flip multiple properties, including mine too. A hidden investor group that Greg was funneling money to. And here's the real kicker: my ranch was supposed to be the centerpiece of their whole scheme. They pitched it as a community development opportunity to some out-of-state buyers. They were going to tear down the barn, split the land, and build luxury rental cabins, all under the HOA's name. That's when it hit me: they weren't just scamming a few homeowners. They were setting up a massive land grab, hiding behind HOA power and using forged compliance violations as leverage to push out property owners who didn't fit the plan. My case just happened to go public first because I caught them in the act. But Lisa's call came with a warning too. She said Karen had started to suspect someone was leaking information. She'd been seen driving past Lisa's house, and now Lisa feared for her safety. I knew then that this wasn't just about stolen land anymore. It was about shutting people up fast before the whole thing collapsed. The next morning, found something terrifying in my mailbox, an unmarked envelope with a photo of me at my ranch gate, taken the night before. I stared at that photo in my hands, my heart pounding. It was a clear warning someone had been watching me, up close, right outside my own property. I called the sheriff immediately, and within an hour, deputies were combing through the area. What they found shocked everyone. Hidden in the trees across from my ranch was a small wildlife camera, rigged to send images to an email. Someone had been tracking my every move, and the email address was linked back to none other than Greg. That was the final piece they needed. Armed with surveillance footage, Lisa's testimony, forged documents, and now the stalking evidence. The sheriff's office got a warrant. The very next day, they raided both Karen's and Greg's homes. What they found was beyond anything I imagined: multiple fake IDs, a burner phone used to communicate with fake buyers, and files on at least 6 other properties in our neighborhood. It wasn't just fraud, it was organized real estate theft. Using the HOA as a cover, Karen was arrested at her house while trying to shred documents in her kitchen. I watched from the sidewalk as she was led out in handcuffs, still trying to scream that it was all legal and he abandoned it. Greg was caught trying to flee town with a duffel bag full of cash and a fake passport. Their entire operation fell apart in one afternoon. I got my ranch back, officially and legally, but the emotional mess took longer to clean up. Lisa testified in court, and her bravery helped bring down what they called one of the boldest HOA scams in our state's history. Most of the HOA board resigned after that, and the association was completely restructured by the county. But just when I thought it was over, I got another anonymous email. No message, just one attachment: a scanned deed for another property I'd never seen, with my name forged on it. Someone else had picked up where Karen left off. Seeing that forged deed in the email hit me like a punch to the gut. At first, I panicked, thinking another scam was already in motion. But after handing it over to my lawyer and the investigators still working the case, we figured out it was a leftover document from Karen and Greg's earlier scheme of failed attempt to claim an abandoned farm nearby, using my identity as a front. It wasn't active, but it reminded me just how deep their plan had gone. The investigation confirmed there were no other active frauds in my name. And finally, I could breathe again. Over the next few months, the legal system moved fast. Karen and Greg both faced multiple charges, including fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, and misuse of HOA authority. They took plea deals and both received prison time. Lisa, with the help of the sheriff and community, was able to regain her peace and even joined the new oversight team for the HOA. The neighborhood pulled together. And for the first time in a long while, people felt like they had a voice again. I spent weeks restoring my ranch. Not just the property, but the peace it once gave me. The orchard bounced back, the animals settled, and the cameras now run 24/7 with backup systems in place. I learned more than I ever wanted to about HOA abuse, property rights, and just how important it is to protect your name and land. If there's one takeaway from this story, it's this: never underestimate how far someone will go when power and greed get in their head. But also, never underestimate the strength of truth, community, and standing your ground. Because even when it feels like the world's flipped upside down, justice has a way of catching up.